Hello and welcome to SEO Is Not That Hard. Your host, Ed Dawson, the founder of keywordspeopleuse.com, the solution to finding the questions people ask online. In today's episode, I'm going to cover the journey of how I got into SEO. Let's get started. So we'll start at the beginning. How did I get into SEO? Well, it all dates back to the 1980s when, as a kid, age 9, in 1985, I got my first computer, which was a Commodore 64, for Christmas after, it must have been 2-3 years of badgering my parents that I wanted a computer. And they finally gave in, and I got a Commodore 64, and that old 8-bit computer was my start into computing. I graduated onto a Commodore Amiga later, but back in those days, while I did try a little bit of programming, I was mainly just playing games like most kids my age. I think we all persuaded our parents that getting us a computer would turn us into these new brilliant programmers. But other than some basic stuff, most of us just played games. So heading off into my teens, I became a bit of a tearaway. I didn't much like school. I did all right, I did well, but I didn't want to stay past 16. And because back then you could leave and just get a job back in the early 90s. But I left, and the summer after leaving, my mum came and kicked me out of bed one afternoon probably, because, being a teenager, I didn't get up early. And she said, "You've got to do something." So I went off to our local sixth form college and interviewed for a load of different courses. They didn't offer A-levels, which is what would have been the traditional thing to do. But they just did these things called BTECs, which still exist, although they might have a different name now, which are more, I suppose, vocational based, and they were like single subject. So I did an interview for engineering and an interview for computer studies. And to be honest, I just like the guy who interviewed me for computer studies the best. His name was Guy Frost. I don't know what he's up to nowadays. He's probably quite old now. And so I decided to do his course, and that's where I really actually learnt to program. I actually really enjoyed my 2 years there. It was a nice, relaxed atmosphere. We just did everything computing. I learned Turbo Pascal and COBOL, two languages. Most people probably never heard of Turbo Pascal. COBOL was very big in the 1960s and 70s. So after doing 2 years there, and I completed the course, got a good grade, and got accepted into Newcastle University to do a computer science degree, which I went to primarily because it was a long way from home and I wanted to get as far away from home as possible, which is ironic given that I now live only about 4 or 5 miles away from where I grew up. That was my main motivation back then, was to get as far away as possible. And that's where I got my first real taste of the internet. I remember one of the first induction lectures we had there. They introduced us to the World Wide Web, which I don't think I'd ever seen before then. I think I'd heard of it, read of it, but in magazines back then, because obviously we didn't read on the internet, we just had magazines. And so the World Wide Web, and it was the Mosaic browser, if I remember right. And I remember thinking, this looks pretty cool. And that's where I got my first basic introduction to the internet, creating web pages and doing some pretty cool stuff, which, you'd only get to do at university. And it was kind of a bit of a brave new world then, but it wasn't really that commercialized back then. But that's where I first got into it. I spent a lot of time on Internet Relay Chat, which was IRC, one of the first ever sort of online chat applications. That's when I got my first modem on my PC, which, we were very unusual, obviously my student house, because I was a computer science student. We could access the internet by dialing into the university. So I got a modem, and we could actually access the internet from home, which was very unusual back in sort of 94, 95 time. But we spent a lot of time there, but it was mainly just mucking about. So after graduating, I got a job at the University of Derby, working on their student record system, which was, to be fair, quite dull. But, it was a good first job. And after, cut that, so we'll come back to here. So I was working on the student record system, but in my spare time, I was playing around with web stuff, trying to create database-driven websites. And I actually got playing about with linking the student record system to web pages so that we could display student records directly through a web browser, so that students could see their own information, update their own information, which was quite novel back at the time. We're talking around about 1999, 2000 now. And in the end, I ended up leading a team who built what was called UDO, University of Derby Online, which was one of the first systems that we knew of where students at a university could actually access and manage their own information online via the web, which obviously saved a huge amount of administration time for the university. So that was really cool. Now, along about this time, I've been working at Derby Uni for, must have been, I think it was 5 years at the time. Now, while I had a great time, I realised that there were lots of other people who worked there, lots of colleagues who'd been there for quite a long time. And these people I started to refer to as lifers. I could see that they were only ever going to work there and they weren't going anywhere. And I decided, I was only in my early 20s and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life working there. No disrespect to anyone that did. If that's your choice, that's your choice. But I wanted to do a little more. So that's when I ended up getting a job at a digital agency in the early 2000s. And my role there was the head of development. So the idea being, I looked after all the developers in the agency and worked on pitches and things like that. And they had some great clients, household names like BAFTA, Cineworld Cinemas, Interflora, Tesco, a large number of airlines, all sorts. It was a really complete change from working in the university sector. But at this time, more and more of their clients who originally just created, I think in many cases, they created websites without any real reason. They were just because it was the thing to do. A lot of them started asking about search engine optimization, SEO. And I remember one of the directors coming to me and saying, "Right, Ed, you are now the SEO expert." And that meant I had to learn what on earth that meant and how to actually start improving. So that's really when I got into SEO, because I was just told, you've got to get into SEO. So now I've been tasked with becoming the SEO expert. Where do I start? Well, I looked around and found a fantastic forum called SEOchat.com, which was an online forum, which was a great resource. It had hugely active members at the time. You could get advice and answers round the clock. And some of the names that were on there at the time, you'll recognise now if you get into SEO. People like Rand Fishkin, who founded SEO Moz, Barry Schwartz, who's known as Rusty Brick, and who is founded Search Engine Roundtable, and Marie Haynes, who's now well known for helping people recover from Google penalties. My name on there was Channel 5, which is why my Twitter handle is Channel 5. You see, people didn't really use real names so much back then. Marie was one of the rare ones to actually use her real name. And I used Channel 5, which is a nickname I'd used online prior to that. It was when I first went on a chat forum, I think back in the AOL days, around at a friend's house, and I had to choose a nickname, and their address was 5 the channel, so I just used the nickname Channel 5, and I've used it ever since for probably about heading towards 30 years now. So anyway, but this forum was where I basically discovered everything SEO. There were all shades of SEO in there, from black hat, grey hat, white hat, but it was very friendly and welcoming in the main. But sadly, it closed down in 2019, but it had really been in decline for a long time before then, with platforms like Twitter and Facebook taking over from it. But that's where I got my grounding in SEO. So to be fair to SEO Chat, that's where I took a lot of information, asked a lot of questions, and that's what we put into practice with our clients at the digital agency. And it really worked. We really got some fantastic results. So I went from knowing nothing about SEO to being told I was the SEO expert to actually learning how to do SEO and implement it for clients. So that's the basic story of how I came from a child of the 80s with the 8-bit computers, then onto PCs, doing computer studies and computer science, getting into web stuff, and then learning SEO. But where did we go from there? I'll cover in a future episode how I went from doing SEO for clients, but then realizing there's a lot of power here in being able to rank websites. Why not do it for myself and build my own websites and my own business on from that? So that's what we'll cover in a future episode. Now, if you're listening to this and saying to yourself, I want to get into SEO, but I don't have a technical background, I don't know how to program, my story is completely different to this, don't worry, because that's just my story. And maybe 20 years ago, it did help to have a technical background to get into SEO. But nowadays, it's just not the case. I think probably it's becoming more of a rarity to have an actual technical background to get into SEO nowadays. And with platforms available nowadays like WordPress, Shopify and others, which just weren't available back in those days, you had to literally write everything from scratch and create things from scratch in many cases. That's not a problem anymore. You can get set up, no code, you can get a website going, and you don't need to be technical at all. But to get your SEO right, anyone can do that if they know what to look for. That's what we'll cover over coming episodes. Thanks for listening. As always, I really appreciate it. Please subscribe and share. It really helps. SEO is not that hard. It's brought to you by keywordspeopleuse.com, the solution to finding the questions people ask online. See why thousands of people use us every day. Try it today for free at keywordspeopleuse.com. If you want to get in touch or have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. I'm at Channel5 on Twitter, or you can email me at podcast@keywordspeopleuse.com. Bye for now, and see you in the next episode of SEO It's Not That Hard.